All right, we are started here. So welcome everybody. This is like unit 3 or week 3 in this class for Introduction to Criminal Justice. And today we'll be going over criminal law, which has a lot of detail. And I'll actually be teaching another class on criminal law coming up here in the next couple blocks. So if this is something that interests you and you want to continue on to taking it, that will be the next class. So let me share my screen real quick with you. All righty. Okay, so just so you guys remember, this session is going to be recorded for learning purposes. Also, my classroom expectations, just follow along with the Nearpod lesson, use the chat tool respectfully and appropriately, respond to questions and instructions the first time. Mostly that's giving over Nearpod as you guys are on there. So, okay, so this is what we're going to be doing in class and what I want for the exit ticket. So the exit ticket is like your weekly assignment, but you also have a case study this week that will be a little bit more involved than you've had in previous weeks. So the objective is giving a quiz in the OLS. Students will accurately answer multiple choice questions about criminal law with 80% accuracy across one trial. So if you go into the OLS here, as you can see, I always post my recordings on the front announcement page. And then you go into content. This is what you'll see. So if you're not here in class, the Nearpod link is right there. That's where you need to click, not the one was posted on the beginning of the video. The lesson 3 assignment, which will be basically a multiple choice quiz. And then you also have this assignment, what's called that. So somebody asked in the question box, when is the end date of this course? The course ends, I believe, on the 14th of October. Let me just verify here. So it's just a block class. So we have 6 units plus some information on that. So I think it's the 14th it's Thursday the 14th. So right before our fall break. So, yep, very good. So basically the assignment, which is more in depth, I'm asking you to watch this video called Stick Up Kid. If you click on the PBS link, it'll be right here. It's 28 minutes long, and so you'll watch it. It has a lot to do with the criminal justice system, and it'll be really good as we dive into actually the juvenile justice system in Unit 5. But what you need to do for the assignment is you go and there's a list of questions right here that what I would do is create a document, either a Google Doc or a doc through Microsoft or something like that. Copy these questions on there. And then when these come up in the video, you need to write about them and then you turn that in. So that's what you'll be doing for your points there. So it's worth quite a bit of points and it'll bring your grade down quite a bit if you don't do it. But so I would highly recommend that you do that. So it is a very interesting study on the criminal justice system. Yep. Okay. So let's get back to our Nearpod really quick. So today what we're going to do, we're going to talk about criminal law. And hold on real quick. I need to stop sharing and make sure I have audio shared with this. I apologize. Okay. All right. So criminal law. So here's some law concepts that you need to be familiar with. So we've spoken about some of these in our recent lessons. The first one's common law. That is basically centered around traditions or customs, basically what has done previously or becomes the basic decisions of today. So those are things that kind of change and have evolved through time. And as you see, like, for example, like marijuana, right? It was illegal and now it's becoming legal. So that's a common law that's kind of changed. You have another thing that's called what's called case law. And so basically, when a judge rules, their law becomes what's called case law. It goes into file. And so that's what actually the Supreme Court mostly judges on. So there's a lot of gray area in the law. And so in that gray area, it usually goes to some type of court, the appellate court or something like that. And so when a case is brought in front of it, all the way up to the highest court in the land, which is the Supreme Court, they are judging on what's called case law. So they're looking back at previous decisions that were made. And then, of course, overall, the case law, if it goes in your favor, judges are usually going to favor on your side. Okay, the other one's called statute law. It's laws that are passed by a lawmaking body such as a state legislature. So that's when, like the Utah state legislature gets together and makes some type of law. Now, necessarily, if that's constitutional or not, that depends on case law, right? And what the Supreme Court would ultimately say. So it's kind of a little messy, let's just say. Our whole system is messy. Okay, so here's some different things that we're looking at when we're looking at the law too. One is act of omission. And an act of omission is significant that an individual fails to do something that was required by law. So for example, if you did not stop and maybe help somebody or something like that, that may be an act of omission. Or some examples they have here: failure to report child abuse, requiring your children to attend school. So if you just don't have them attend school. So somebody, can you get arrested for these? You could, usually what it would happen is you would go into the civil court system. So there's two sides of it. There's criminal and there's like the civil court system. So a lot of these, like civilly, you could be sued and you wouldn't be criminally done, right? So we're trying to kind of talk more about the criminal part, but technically, if it's enforced, remember how we talked about sometimes they enforce laws and sometimes they don't, that's all dependent upon that. So it's all messy. So like to say yes, you could, or no, you couldn't. There's never a definite answer when it comes to this. Okay, one is an act. The next one's called an act of commission. That's an act, meaning that an individual carried out a physical act which violated in a law. So for example, murder, assault, theft, anything like that would be considered an act of commission. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video that kind of explains a little bit about what like an attorney general kind of thing would do, or a defense lawyer. So this is kind of interesting. So I'm going to mute myself and play it. Well, first let me play it real quick.
Have you ever wondered?
Can you guys hear that okay? Yeah, okay.
Wondered how criminal charges are filed? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to tell you how. This is Crim Law 101. I'm your professor and class is in session. My name is Jamal Kersey, and I'm a criminal defense attorney in San Diego. And in this video, I'm going to explain how criminal charges get filed in court. Let's start with police investigation. One of the ways police investigations are initiated is in response to a 911 call. Someone calls 911 with an emergency, the dispatcher puts the call out, and officers respond to the scene. The officers take the statement of the reporting party and any witnesses. Crime scene investigators may take photographs, collect evidence, or shoot video of the scene. Later on, a detective may follow up with any witnesses to confirm or clarify their statements. Reports are prepared and the evidence collected is compiled. The police then turn over all of the information, the reports containing the witness statements, videos, photographs, etc., over to the DA's office. From there, an issuing DA reviews the evidence. The police will generally recommend the charges which should be filed. The issuing DA reviews the evidence to see what, if any, charges should be filed. And this is done by looking at the elements of a crime. For example, a robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 211 has two elements. One is the taking of property, and two, using fear or force. A burglary in violation of Penal Code Section 459 has two elements as well. One is the entry of a building, and two, with the intent to commit theft or any felony therein. And so the DA is analyzing the facts to see which charges she believes can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Sometimes additional evidence is needed in order for the DA to reach the conclusion that she can prove her case beyond a reasonable doubt. In this instance, the detectives would actually be called on to conduct further investigation. In other occasions, even though the detectives make a recommendation for certain charges to be filed, the DA does not believe that the charge can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt and declines to file the charge. An important distinction is the fact that law enforcement merely needs probable cause in order to arrest somebody for committing a crime. Probable cause is a relatively low standard. A DA must be confident that she can prove her case beyond a reasonable doubt. And this explains why sometimes people are arrested for a crime but don't actually get charged in court, or why in some cases charges get dismissed after they've been filed. Assuming there's sufficient evidence justifying criminal charges, the next step is the drafting of a document called the complaint. The complaint has the defendant's name, date of birth, and booking number on it, along with a case number. It lists each of the charges and allegations against the defendant, along with the sentencing ranges for each charge. The complaint is then filed in court. The next step is the defendant's initial appearance, which is called the arraignment. And in the arraignment, the accused is formally read the charges against him, and he enters his plea. You can check out my video on where I explain what happens at the arraignment. Well, that's a quick explanation on how criminal charges get filed in court. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did,
all right. So I thought he gave kind of a good overview of basically how criminal charges are filed. And it was kind of interesting to me. I liked to be able to search like a car or a house or a person. You just need probable cause. But in order to convict, right, there has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So they have to prove it quite a bit. So that's why you have the term innocent until proven guilty, until they are actually found convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. So, okay, after watching this video, just want to put on the Nearpod. Do you have any questions? What kind of questions do you have? Okay, you're still thinking. Yeah, it's a lot to kind of process. And as I said, this unit, criminal law, it's so broad and big, and that's how we break it down by a whole actual class that we'll be doing later. So somebody said, can probable cause just be like if you look guilty of something, or if you look like maybe suspicious, right? I'm assuming that's what it says. So what it means is, for example, if a police officer pulled me over and they could smell alcohol, that would be a probable cause. If I was walking down the street and I saw the police officer and I go and I throw something in the bushes, that would be probable cause. Okay. If there's some type of evidence that they found, they could bring something to a judge and get a search warrant of my home. Okay. So that would be probable cause. Very good question. Okay. So unsure, none. What about fake witnesses? Okay. So very good. So, I mean, you have two sides when you're looking at when you're going to be in a trial, right? So one's the defendant and one's the plaintiff. So usually you have the prosecution. I mean, That's in a civil court. Sorry. So you have the defendant, and then you have the prosecution. So somebody that's trying to. So when they're looking at witnesses, each of them get to bring witnesses up, right? So if you had somebody that was a fake witness, right, you could go and counter with somebody that was an actual witness. So, and basically lying to a court of law is a felony. And so if they got caught of that, they would be in trouble, right? So they wouldn't want to do that. Okay, so not many questions, none. Do they do lie detector tests? Yes, so they do have lie detector tests. However, if the judge feels that they're maybe not right, they could throw them out. Everybody says, well, you can basically, cheat a lie detector or whatever. It's there. So somebody says it keeps telling me the class is not started yet. I don't understand what that means. We have started, just so you know. Yeah, like Mark Hoffman. I can't remember that exact case in particular, but it sounds familiar. Very good question. But yeah, they could throw, and if we don't, here's the thing too. If the police do not follow certain procedures in the way that they're supposed to be followed, all that evidence can be dismissed. So that's why it's super important for the police officers to follow the actual steps of probable cause, getting a search warrant, doing things by the book, or it could get thrown out in court and they could not, basically slide. Okay, so that was Murder Among the Mormons. Okay. Yeah, I know I've heard of that name before. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on that. That's a good one. Okay, so here's some other things. Oh, it's on Netflix? Okay, yeah, I'll have to watch it sometime. That sounds good. So the Utah Law Book produced by the Utah legislature in 1953. This book is basically revised annually as the legislature meets and they enact new laws. And as we talked about, there's so many laws. I mean, the book's probably like, I don't know, like so big, right? So I like how they go and actually retract a lot of the laws that don't make sense anymore. Statutory law for the state of Utah, there's like a numbering system that has a title, chapter, and section in it. And if you go to the website, I'll type it in the chat if this interests anybody at all, le.utah.gov. That's where you can actually go and look at all of the different statutory laws that are put in place. Oops. Okay. We're going to skip that one. Okay, here's some interesting ones. So statute of limitations. So for some, yeah, I'm not sure what that means, Nathan. For some offenses, there's what's called a statute of limitations, which means they need to be brought up in a certain amount of time. If it goes past that time, it just goes away. So a regular infraction is just up to a year. So if nobody comes and brings that up, a misdemeanor, 2 years, a felony, 4 years, but a capital offense, remember how we talked about capital offenses before, like murder, aggravated assault, burglary, all that kind of stuff, auto theft, that never goes away. So that's why you see sometimes on the news, like a cold case has been broken and maybe like new DNA has been found and they found the murderer after like 30 years. That's because there's no statute of limitations on that law. Okay, he talked about this a little bit in the video, like information. Prosecution brings what information is filed. The information is a legal document that approaches the court on the different things. Okay, so I got some questions going on here. Let me just look at those real quick. So when a politician says they were raped years ago, they can still prosecute that. Yes, depending on how it is, right? Okay, so there's aggravated rape, and then there's also like not aggravated. So aggravated basically means that it's very like violent, that kind of stuff. So a lot of times they can't bring it. So what they're doing with all these ones that are being brought up years and years later, they're actually, some of them are doing it criminally if they can, and then some are doing it what would they say, like civilly, right? So they're looking for money or civil damages, and prosecution can go through one, both, or either, right? So civil damages is basically when they get money out of what happened, and then the criminal one is when they are sentenced to serve some time or something like that. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense there. Oh, like Bill Cosby. Yeah, so that was very aggravated, talking about like what if you look into the actual case itself. But then I believe, if I can remember, I don't like watching the news very much. There's just too much going on. They're talking about Bill Cosby. I think he was acquitted, which basically means that they found something in the file that wasn't done properly, and he was shown, not that he's not guilty, but that he basically, the trial was not good, right? So there's so many different like legal and so when somebody gets tried and convicted of murder, they usually probably did it. There are some very rare cases where they didn't do it, but it is most likely that they did it, because we have that beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil court, you don't have to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. You just have to have basically majority, and then they could get like some type of civil damages like money or something like that. So principles of criminal responsibility, intent. So somebody that intentionally does something, they knowingly do something, they recklessly do something, they negligently do something. Traffic laws do not require intent. So that's something that the police need to follow. And what they're looking for, and attorneys are looking for, are they intentionally doing it? They're knowingly doing it. Their mind's actually there, recklessly or negligently. Okay, so each crime is composed of elements, each of which must be proven in order to find the defendant guilty. Okay, so for example, the elements of theft, unauthorized control, the property of another, and intent to deprive, so take away. So some classifications of criminal offenses, right? We already talked about a felony. A felony is punishable by prison sentence. Okay, so here's the thing, the definition between prison and jail. So prison is longer than a year, and jail, and its offense punishable by jail, is sentenced up to 1 year. So jail is short-term, prison is long-term. So a capital felony, remember that's the one that does not have a statute of limitations, can fall under for death or life imprisonment. 2 separate hearings take place. One is to determine guilty or innocence. The other is to determine what penalty should be imposed. So an example of this would be aggravated murder. So a first-degree felony. And so here's some things like as we're talking about that, on statute, remember that's what the legislature makes. They actually have basically minimum sentences, right? So for first degree felony, the minimum sentence is 5 years to life imprisonment. Okay. So you know that if you did something like that and you were convicted, you'd be spending a minimum of 5 years to life in prison. So that would be like murder, aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, aggravated kidnap, and rape. Second degree felony would be 1 to 15 years. So something like manslaughter. So manslaughter could be an accidental, but you were negligent in what you were doing, right? So texting and driving, kidnapping, burglary of a residence, forcible sexual abuse, robbery, theft that exceeds $5,000. Third degree felony, 0 to 5 years imprisonment. Theft of an item's value is from $1,000 to $5,000. Arson with the intent to defraud insurers. Aggravated assault. Okay, so then we go down to our misdemeanors. You have Class A misdemeanors is up to 1 year in jail. Vehicle burglary, theft of items valued from $300 to $1,000. Assault on a peace officer, so that means a police officer. Class B is up to 6 months in jail. Assault would be one of those. Criminal trespassing in a dwelling, theft of an item less than $300, or telephone harassment, which is kind of interesting. I feel like I get a lot of that with spam calls. Class C misdemeanor is up to 3 months in jail. Disorderly conduct, criminal trespass, and most traffic violations. Okay, so what is the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony? Okay, so somebody said less jail time and less serious offense, right? Stalking would probably be a misdemeanor. I'd probably say Class B, probably somewhere around there. I'm not exactly sure. Drugs, it depends on how much, right? If you were also distributing, that's another case. It could be up to a felony. Drugs could. Would all of this stuff go on your record for life? Yes. So if you get some type of thing, you can do something what's called, especially if this is your first offense, called a plea in abeyance. It's basically just saying that, yeah, it kind of says it expunges it, which basically means that if you are do not have anything else in the next 5 years, they'll take it off your record. They usually do that for more of juveniles or, as I said, first-time offenders. Okay, so somebody said the difference between a misdemeanor or a felony, okay, is the number of jail time. Okay. Right, remember, a felony, you're going to prison. A misdemeanor, you're going to go to jail. It does not go away eventually. Like, felonies are stay on your record forever. And if you're a convicted felon, you are unable to also vote. Okay, that's another thing that's kind of interesting. Oh, it didn't appear. Did you push post? So somebody said you have to report it online. So depending on what your thing is, like for example, they have different registries. Like they have a sex offender registry, and so that you would have to report where you're living, and you can actually look that up online. Yeah. Okay, you said a misdemeanor is possible jail time and a felony is prison. Good. And then I'll follow your neighbors. Only I don't know about that, Taya, if they actually do that or not. They notify your neighbors. I'm not sure they do. They just put it out there on the registry. From what I remember of it, I'm not super familiar with it. Yeah, I guess you'd say it is easier to obey the law, right? And not get into this stuff. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, there's like a ton of stuff, so we're gonna skip a couple things here, okay? Okay, let's go to this one right here. Obstructing justice, because this is kind of an interesting one that people like to get into. It's basically with the intent to hinder, prevent, delay, discovery, prosecution, conviction, or punishment. So somebody said about false witnesses or something like that. This would be it called obstructing justice. And so that is something that you cannot do if the police are trying to do something. You cannot, yeah, like hiding evidence, correct, concealing or destroying something. Okay, cannot do that. Okay, a false reporting of a crime. Okay, so I like the liar, liar shirt there. Somebody said harboring a fugitive, correct. Okay, knowingly giving false information on the purpose of inducing the officer to believe that another person committed an offense. Okay. Giving false personal information is one. Okay. So if you got caught and I just said, oh, I'm my brother, right? I give him my brother's name instead of my name because I don't want to get in trouble. Okay. So that would be not good. Okay. Here's some other ones are crimes against public disorder and decency. Would be disorderly conduct, electronic communication harassment, okay, intoxication or lewdness. Okay. Disorderly conduct, I guess you can read back on this if you want, just being violent or threatening behavior. Somebody that's being obnoisive or viewing. I had a neighbor that had people come to their door 5 or 6 times a day trying to, because they wanted to talk to them about something. And they had their camera, their Ring camera out there, and they told them to go away. And they finally had to get the police officers involved. Probably intoxication. You probably heard of that. You cannot be intoxicated and out in public as you're maybe endangering and that kind of stuff. And then let's see here. Definition of, oh man, I keep pushing these things, sorry, on accident. So here's another thing with a firearm. Okay, there's restrictions, not a citizen of the US. Okay, so we do have the Second Amendment calls for a right to bear arms, but there are laws around that. If you're convicted of a violent crime, you're unable to hold one. If you're addicted to any use of narcotic drugs, you should not be that. If you're declared mentally incompetent, you cannot have a firearm either. Okay, so there are restrictions. If you're under 18, all of you guys that are in class here, maybe some of you are 18, but you should not be able to possess a firearm. Okay, we're going to okay, let's jump to this one right here. Next one, controlled substance. We've kind of talked about this too. They're drug-free school zones. That's why it's so important to not have drugs in there. You're going to get a lot more offense if you're in school with drugs. The possession of alcohol by a minor. So if you're under 21, there's that's why they have all those laws in place. You cannot consume, purchase alcohol or beverages for someone that's under 21. Then unlawful acts at school, which is kind of interesting if you are trespassing in any school. So if the school actually asks you to leave or you're not welcome there, they can actually give you a trespassing ticket. So kind of interesting. Or you're suspended from school. That means not be able to attend any school functions. Now being online, that doesn't really worry too much about us, right? Okay, so that gets us to the end there. If you have any questions, please ask me, but I just want to recap real quick. This week's stuff, what we need to do, we have the exit ticket, which is the lesson 3 assignment that just goes over terms and stuff for this. And then you have the stick up kid assignment, where you need to watch this video on PBS Kids, which is right here. It's about 28 minutes about Alonzo Thomas. He was sent to an adult prison in California at the age of 16 and how spending more than a decade behind bars impacted him. Okay. So it is, and you need to look at these questions before and write down those questions. So, okay, that's all I got. I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll take any questions.